I mostly just wanted to give this talk so I could put Solange on my front slide, because she is a queen. But I actually want to start out by telling you guys a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. And it's a pet peeve about how we talk about diversity. And you've probably heard this phrase more than you can count, because I know I certainly have. Anytime we talk about the abysmal state of diversity in tech, inevitably someone says, but you know what? It's not just about diversity of race, gender, and sexuality. It's also about diversity of thought. And my reaction is always the exact same. Oops. Which is, of course it is. Of course it is. Absolutely. But guess what? If we just solved our, poor Robin, he gets redeemed later, don't worry. But if we just solved our issues of racial, gender, sexual orientation, diversity in tech, you know what we would get for free? Diversity of thought. And so, you know, when people feel the need to say that, right? Like it's obvious, right? But I don't hate that phrase because it's obvious, although it's annoying. I hate it because it makes people like myself, who by virtue of our race, gender, and sexuality, and I would also add class background, it makes those of us who are often the only one feel like that type of diversity is an afterthought. That either people don't care or are too afraid to name the problem for what it is, despite the fact that it negatively influences our life every single day when we have to walk into work. But I understand why people say this, because it's seductive, and it's easy, and it doesn't court controversy in the way that being honest about the problem does. It's so seductive that I, a black lesbian raised on the west side of Chicago, first person in my family to go to college, that I almost believed it. But everything for me changed several months ago when I joined my team at Spotify. When I click, it makes a sound, but I'm gonna roll with it. And okay, just move with it, bear with me. So this is my squad. At Spotify, we organize our engineering teams around this concept of a squad, which is a self-organizing, cross-functional team. In my case, my team is made up of mostly back-end data and machine learning engineers, with myself as a product owner, as well as a designer and a data scientist. And we have the awesome job of working on recommendations for Spotify's home screen. And as much as I love, the company that people know and love to give me feedback on, I welcome it later today, but please bring a drink if you have the feedback. But as much as I love that, the real reason these last several months have been transformative is because this is the most diverse squad or the most diverse team, particularly in engineering, that I've ever had worked with. But what does that really mean when I say most diverse team? I swear I'm not hitting it really hard. I think it's because this is here. All right, real-time problem solving. Did it quit on me? Oh no, okay. Okay, all right, so what I mean by diversity is 30% women. So I'm really proud of the fact that my team is 30% women and that our most senior engineer is a rock star data engineer and a woman. My team is also 30% fabulous, which means that 30% of us identify as members of the LGBTQ community. We're also, 20% of us identify as Black or Latinx. One person is Dominican, so maybe it's 25, we're unclear. And I'm also super proud of the fact that 20% of us were the first people in our family to ever go to college. And I know you're probably thinking, yes, for sure. Repping for first generation college students. And I know you're probably thinking, that's it? That's the most diverse team you've ever worked on? You're probably expecting something a little bit more like this, right? This United Colors of Benetton, full multinational, multiracial, gender balance spread. But I'll be honest that it says as much about the diversity of my team as it does about diversity in technology that this is, in fact, the most diverse team I've ever worked on. But if it were just about, diversity by the numbers, I wouldn't be speaking with you today. It's also about the fact that beyond being an incredibly diverse team, we've also been able to create a culture of inclusion, right? Because it doesn't matter if you get invited to the party if no one asks you to dance, right? It doesn't matter if you assemble the right people if those people don't act as equals, right, for problem solving. And we're solving some really complex problems as we think about the recommendation space at Spotify. And I've thought a lot about, what makes this team different, and it absolutely is this element of inclusion, this inclusive culture we've been able to cultivate. And as I've reflected and read about kind of what makes inclusion, the thing that I've landed on that's a secret sauce is this notion of team psychological safety, which is defined as, a shared understanding by all team members that the team is a safe space for interpersonal risk-taking, which again, you're probably like, what the fuck does that mean? Those a lot of words. So I'll give you a few examples of what I mean by interpersonal risk-taking. Interpersonal risk-taking on my team looks like someone feeling safe enough to disclose that they feel self-conscious because they didn't finish their degree, even though they've obviously been able to do a lot for themselves and be a talented engineer at a place like Spotify. It still makes them feel self-conscious. And a team member responding not with awkward silence or pity, but with an admission of vulnerability themselves, that despite the fact that they have their degree, they often struggle with insecurity as well. That's what interpersonal risk-taking looks like. That's what it looks like when people feel safe. It looks like us not making assumptions about normative experiences, and that people feeling safe enough to say, you know what, I didn't grow up like that. And people feeling safe enough to actually share about their full experiences and their whole selves. For me, when it really landed was I was expressing some anger, rage, and disappointment at how, particularly around racial diversity, I felt like people don't want to wrestle with the real issues and name things for what they are. And a coworker who was a straight white man saying, you know what, I completely agree. I sometimes wish we just called it for what it was, systemic racism and white supremacy. And after I picked up my jaw off the floor, I felt in that moment what it's like to be seen and to be able to bring your full self to a team and to have that full self be welcome. But again, the real thing I want to talk about is the way that this diversity and this inclusion makes us a high-performing team. Beyond just being incredibly diverse, this is one of the most technically advanced teams I've ever had the privilege of working on. We have very senior engineers, we have research scientists, people with multiple PhDs, and it's the kind of space where it could easily fall into, a battle of expertise. But because we've been able to cultivate this sense of interpersonal risk-taking and a safe space for that, people feel okay saying, I actually don't know what you're talking about. Can you break it down for me? And it's not just myself as the non-technical product owner, but it's every member of the team that's able to feel safe enough to say, I don't know. And what that's resulted in is that we get to the issue of, we get to the nature and the heart of problems faster because we don't pretend like we know. And we feel safe enough to say, I don't know. And we feel comfortable enough to say, I don't know either, let's figure it out together. And it's accelerated the pace at which we've been able to execute. The other reason I bring up the fact that my team is high performing, beyond wanting to pat them on the back, is that I want us to finally put to rest this notion that there's a trade-off between diversity and execution. I want today for us to bury this phrase that, quote unquote, people are afraid of lowering the bar. Because I've lived my firsthand experience understanding that simply isn't true, that it is in fact the opposite. So I could talk forever about how my team is incredible, and I probably would, but is that really why I came here to talk to you all today? It's not. What's really the takeaway? Is it that Spotify is a diverse utopia and you all should work there? No, but we are hiring, so come see us at Le Poisson Rouge. I'm proud of the work that Spotify is doing around diversity. I'm proud of it not just because of things like being top sponsors of Lesbians Who Tech and Out for Undergrad and leaders in paid parental leave and having dedicated programs for women and people of color on both the tech and non-tech side of our business. I'm proud of it because internally I see us struggling and having tough conversations about what does it mean as a company to create a really inclusive environment. And every day I feel the benefit of that. Okay, so if that's not the takeaway, is the takeaway that my team is a utopia and you all should work there? Again, not quite, but we are hiring a senior Android developer, so women and people of color are especially encouraged to apply, so let me know if you're interested. I'd love to talk to you. But again, my team is, relative to my experience diverse, but we can, should, and need to be more diverse, right? We're not there either. So that's not the takeaway I want you to take from this. I want you to take away, what I've been reflecting on. This is baby Tiffany from years ago in her little Noogler hat. I've been working in tech for over 8 years now, and as proud and privileged as I am to work on a team like mine, I also kind of have been grieving the fact that it's taken me 8 years to feel like I really belong in this industry. I've been grieving the fact that outside of spaces like Lesbians Who Tech, I've had to cut up my identity into multiple pieces and walk into work as only a shell of myself. And I think that that it's sad that that's still a privilege, that some people in our industry never get to feel what it's like to really be seen and belong where they work. And that's a disservice to that person, but it's also a disservice to the necessary progress we need to make as an industry. And so if you take one thing away from this talk, I hope you take this, that every fat, femme, disabled, gender nonconforming, Black, Latinx, Native American, trans, mask, first generation, undocumented, working class, developer boot camp graduate, poor, veteran, all of us, we all deserve a seat at the table. And not only that, after we have our seat at the table, when the revolution comes, we'll burn that fucking table to the ground. Thank you.